Eskom's Chief Executive Officer, Andre de Ruyter, is navigating a political minefield as he collects overdue debt, reduces electricity theft, and tries to bolster revenue. Yesterday, residents who've been without electricity since June took their frustrations to Eskom's front door, staging a protest outside Megawatt Park. Joining us tonight is Eskom spokesperson Sikonathi Mantshantsha. Sikonathi, good evening and thank you so much for your time. We've just been in conversation with the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, that's NERSA. We've been talking about the court case which you have won, of course, that guarantees, at least for now, should the appeal not win, that guarantees Eskom increases in tariffs over the next couple of years. Do you think that Eskom deserves tariff increases?
Cathy, that's a nice question, which unfortunately requires a bit of an education. By law, Eskom must apply to the electricity regulator every year and state what amount of increases it requires in order to carry out its operation. Unlike any other business, Eskom cannot just decide what it will charge customers the following year. So yes, the costs keep increasing, and Eskom needs to get the revenue to actually match the costs in order to be able to sustainably generate electricity for the people of South Africa. So it is enshrined in the law for Eskom to go every year to the regulator and ask for a price increase. And the regulator must look at the available facts and make a decision as to the quantity of that increase that it will grant.
Well, the cost may be increasing, but the service delivery is decreasing.
That is absolutely true, Cathy. No honest person can dispute that. The reality of the matter, as Eskom has been informing the people of South Africa for quite a while now, the reality is that we are operating a very unreliable infrastructure that has, over the past few years, been neglected, yes, certainly by Eskom in some instances and by other factors. The reality of the matter is that we have had reducing sales every year. So it is absolutely true. However, we do not have, as the people of South Africa, the option of doing nothing, and we cannot allow Eskom to degenerate and into total rot and therefore be unable to supply electricity. The current management team and future management teams have an obligation to invest in the business in order to ensure a continuous supply of electricity well into the future.
Of course, that's the line that is often used to justify why Eskom needs as much money that it needs, whether it's if it's asking for a bailout, a cash injection. The line is that Eskom cannot afford to fail. Yet, in the same breath, Eskom keeps failing the people of this country and expecting them to pay even more for the inefficiency of the utility.
Cathy, let's repeat this again. Nobody honest inside Eskom itself can claim that Eskom has been shooting the lights out over the past 10 years or so. The reality of the matter is Eskom has not always conducted itself in the way it should always have. The story goes many years back. However, we do not have an option and we do not have the luxury of pointing fingers. What Eskom needs to do is to do everything that it can to make sure it invests in the business for the future. Yes, indeed, to weed out all the inefficiencies that are costing the people of South Africa money. We do not have the luxury of doing nothing and just folding our arms if we want to still be able to supply electricity and be a reliable supplier at that.
Sure, but we must point fingers because ultimately South Africans are paying for this cost with very little money under very tough economic times. So if Eskom is looking at, let's say, the proposed 15% increase going into next year, this is to a country that has lost almost 3 million jobs just within the last 6 months of this year. How are you expecting that ordinary South Africans must be able to make sense of such a tariff increase when, in fact, their own salaries have gone down? They've lost their jobs.
I will help you and add that part of the loss of those jobs has been the unreliability of electricity supply. Hence, I am telling you that something you already know, that Eskom has got no choice. It must invest in the infrastructure in order to turn the situation around so that we can be a reliable supplier of electricity, in order to attract investments into this country, in order to make sure that we are able to supply electricity to each and every corner of the Republic of South Africa and beyond. That is unfortunately the reality, and it must be paid for. The users of the infrastructure, Cathy, as you know, should pay for the service.
How do we know that Eskom is being any more responsible today than it was yesterday? Because many of the evergreen contracts that have been milking Eskom dry remain in place.
I love the question. There are quite a few examples and successes over the past few months and years of Eskom doing everything that it can to claw back and indeed put itself on a sustainable performance. Recently, Eskom has lodged summons in the High Court of Gauteng, and where it is demanding the return of 3.8 billion rands that was lost to corruption. Former employees and executives of Eskom played a very large part in the loss of the money to Eskom, government ministers, members of parliament, and other people. Before then, Cathy, there is a summons, or there is a letter of demand against PwC, again demanding money that has been lost under dubious circumstances. We have received money from Deloitte, and as you know, we have received more than 1 billion rand back from McKinsey. These are efforts on the part of Eskom's management to root out corruption, and those are only the starting points over the last 2 years. There is a process underway at Eskom in which senior executives and indeed other employees have been taken through lifestyle audits, and through that process we have parted ways with quite a lot of our colleagues who should not be at Eskom due to their own conduct. So while we cannot overnight come and tell the people of South Africa there is no more corruption, there is no more inefficiency, as these, as you know, have built up over years, we have a duty now, and Eskom is taking those efforts to recover every cent that has been lost to corruption, to correct every inefficiency that we can. We have spoken to the people of South Africa about efforts at the Medupi power station and the Kusile power station to correct the design defects in order to enable the company to generate more electricity, even more reliable. There are almost on a daily basis headlines about Eskom collecting revenue from municipalities that are failing to pay the utility. So we are not just sitting there and begging the people of South Africa and beating up them for more money, but on Eskom's side, we are doing everything we can to correct the ship.
Sikonathi, before I let you go, when else can we expect you to switch the lights off again?
Load shedding is not something that anyone should be looking forward to, and I can assure you now that nobody at Eskom enjoys switching off electricity. The reality of the matter is that we do not have a very reliable infrastructure in order to carry us supplying electricity. So we are doing the things that I have mentioned already, including the reliability maintenance, that will make sure that hopefully a year from now, we are not going to be answering this question about load shedding.
Does that mean that we'll get through the weekend without any load shedding?
Cathy, at this point, the system is quite stable, and we've got a reserve margin at this very point of about 10%. However, as you do know, things change quite drastically at Eskom, particularly as demand picks up in cold weather and when we have to run these old power stations at full capacity. Things can change quite quickly, but as it stands now, we've got quite a margin, and we do not have to worry about load shedding for a few days. We need again to state this point when we talk about the absence of load shedding. Should things carry on as they do now, we do not have a reason to worry about load shedding for a few weeks. But should things again, machines break down, as they often do, we must admit this, then the situation changes. But the people of South Africa can rely on us to inform them in good time should there be a need for load shedding.